Good morning and welcome to the last kind of AutoTalk weekly wrap of the business year, I guess you could say. Christmas is next week. We'll probably still try and do a few during the Christmas break, but things are pretty much wound down now. Not that there's a lot of sales to wind down, is there, Graham? I mean, the catchline I put on this episode is 2025, Jingle Bells, no one sells. So, yeah.
Well, here's a nice lead into the show, Richard. Thanks a lot for pumping up our balloons on that one. I would say that everyone's already either left, judging by the road outside, everyone's already actually left Auckland, for example, and heading off on holiday. But I can't see there being a whole lot going on the 27th would be our next Friday. I think it's going to be everyone's closed for business. Only stupid dealers like us stay open on the 27th.
Last minute rush for people movers and family wagons. Yeah.
Oh, there's a tumbleweed.
Yeah. How many people working on the yard right now, Graham?
Me.
Yep.
So if Mrs. Spaghetti walks on the yard and wants to buy a car right about now, particularly in Aqua, we are not going to be recording a show with me anymore. Not today.
I'm the last person left on the in the Auto Media Group editorial team. Well, on the business side, the consumer side, there's a few people still left in the auto car offices, but yeah, it's pretty quiet here. And you're retired, David, so this is all irrelevant to you. This is just another day of the year, isn't it?
I was just about to doze off again.
Oh man, one of those days.
Yep. Everyone in the group is off on holiday as of tomorrow, and I'm literally the last person in the company working through with 5 websites to keep populated. So while I'm going away on a holiday, I will still be on my computer probably very early in the morning for a couple of hours every day, because we want to make sure that people are kept abreast if anything happens. Not that I'm sure much will. In fact, it gets pretty quiet now for a while.
Is it like politics, though, where the automotive industry just saves up the sneaky bad news and all the bits and pieces? You don't really want anyone to talk about, and they sort of shove it out on the last working day of the year, so there's no chance of anybody having a bit of a sideways legal word about it, or the media, the press getting a hold of it.
Well, yes and no, but I've always found that a lot of the car company execs and certainly the bigger dealers, once the private schools are out for the year and that they're kind of off and they're not back till probably late January, though. There seems to be a few people around this year. Spotted the new chief executive, managing director for New Zealand, Alina Atina, out at their holding yard yesterday, firing up a new V8 Mustang. She looked like she was enjoying that.
Wouldn't she?
Yes, we'll see what kind of happens over the next little bit as to whether anything does happen this year. There's a bit of movement overseas still going on that we'll talk about later, so that could keep people around, but I doubt it. Yeah.
I used to, when you're an industry advocate, the Christmas New Year period was a surprisingly good period to actually put some stuff to the media that would normally be a little bit glossed over, because it's
we're all lazy and bored and there's nothing else to do at that time of year.
Yeah.
Or stuff you want to bury, David. Just the sort of the bad news that you had to put out there somewhere, but you had to find the appropriate place to bury it. And the 23rd of December is a really good place to bury stuff.
Typically bad news gets picked up if it's important enough. It's when you've got other news that isn't bad news, but you actually want to sort of get some information out there. I used to save it up for the time between after Christmas, but before New Year, and the first few days after the New Year, because there's not a lot else going on. And I think there's a lot of other organisations do that too, because you see all sorts of interesting stories. Department of Conservation is particularly good at doing it. They run a lot of stories over the festive season.
That's
but it's because everything else is quiet.
Yep.
So
Silly
the
season.
story though we should be talking about though is one of them is we're talking about this end of the year stuff. Is are we going to see any sort of flurry of sales? I'm talking about the news sector here, really. Are we going to see any sort of, traditionally, this is a time when everyone tries to push the stock out to get the numbers up for the end of the year. It maybe there's a race between different models, particularly remember the old days of the Hilux versus Ranger rivalry, where they'd be putting every single last truck be going out on a plate of some sort before the 31st. But I haven't heard any tales of this big retail rush out there in the news sector. Are you hearing anything, or is it just crickets
Nope.
across the board?
It was funny. I literally just got a text saying, I don't know if I'll say the brand, but someone have 200 EVs in stock and will pre-reg them this month before they get too much older.
Yeah, okay. And when you say too much older,
I basically know who's going to be. I can predict who's going to be the top. Oh, my camera's gone. Hang on.
we can still hear your dulcet tones. Oh, he's really gone now, David. It's just you and I holding the fort. But we're going to hear the dulcet tones of somebody saying that they've got the lead on EV sales for the year. The question is, how old are those vehicles? Are we talking about 23 stock or 24 stock?
I think but looking at the stats that Amy put out for November, because December won't come out till January, there are clear winners in a number of margins, and the new vehicle market is very soft. She was quite clear about that, and we all know that it's a challenge. So the race is really around EVs, and pre-reg has typically happened over this period, but a lot of the OEMs are having a wee rethink, I gather, about pre-reg, other than stock that's been sitting around for ages. And the reason why they'll pre-reg stock that's been sitting around, if it's coming up to 2 years, the Commerce Commission considers that over 18 months to 2 years old, since it's arrived in NZ, it's not considered to be a new vehicle, and it starts impacting the price. So you pre-reg it, but pre-reg, you impact the price anyway. So it's a way of damage control in terms of the losses on the value of a new vehicle.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, this is a new thing for us to deal with, isn't it? Where we're used to pre-regs to try and boost your numbers at the end of the year. But now we've got an environment where there's a lot of unsold stock out there that probably is actually 23 stock. You can't afford to have it hanging over for another year, and now you're entering in 2025, consumers walking on with stock that is patently built in their mind 2 years ago.
I like Ford's approach with the Marquee, where they did it as a bit of a program where basically they would, if you were a buyer they thought was going to buy one, they'll reg you a car. Well, they had them all regged. You take it on a 1 week test drive, and then you come back and they sell it to you as a used car. which means they can justify a whole pile of different things as to how they're pricing it and how they register it and the age of the vehicle and what they call it. With the vehicles we're talking about before, they are 2023 cars, and we're very much against this headline now, or this issue now, with some of these EVs where they're NCM batteries that they have to be moved, so they can't stay new anyway. They're going to have some miles on them.
Yeah, it's all the creative ways that come to move stock that's sitting around, because if it sits around, it increasingly becomes a liability. So they find creative ways to try and reduce that liability.
Yes. Right, now let's carry on with the episode and fire through this fairly quickly in case someone...
we're at the episode. This is the news, isn't it?
Well, it is. That's true. Okay, whatever.
It's not good news either.
Let's just run through stuff quickly, because it's pretty light this week. I mean, realistically, it's what is going on out there, though. Who knows? Who knows what will come through? Now, the latest AutoTalk magazine is out. If you haven't been through that yet, what are you doing? We have some great stories in there talking about the emissions rules, Giltrap and Gearley, and we have a response from our friend Christopher Schultz down in Christchurch, who admits he shouldn't have done what he done. He clarified a few things around the $15,000 not returned to the customer, and Yeah, go through there. We've given him a reasonable run to have his piece, though we have noted that some of what he said doesn't tie up with necessarily evidence that is out there. One point he did make was that it wasn't with the case of the car, with the $15,000 car, that he was given $15,000 and he hadn't passed that on to the client. And this is in no way justifying what he did. It in some ways it makes it even sillier. He was due a refund of what he paid for the car, which was $10,400 from the supplier. The supplier had, after him doing a few things, cancelled their account with him and said they would no longer be delivering him vehicles, and so they owed him about $9,000 in refunds. And they offered, essentially, because the car was financed, to send that money direct to the financier to settle the debt, so that they had the car off the hook, clean and clear. And he did not like that idea. And so they were in dispute over that, and he was wanting to claim the $9,000 direct back. Now, of course, him saying that suggests that, it doesn't suggest, but some could draw that he was going to take that money back for his own use and not necessarily pay off the finance on the car, thusly not giving the finance company free and clear title to the car. Because otherwise, why would he not do that? So yeah, anyway, read about that in the magazine. Now, the interesting thing there is he, apologized for a lot of stuff. He, was very like, it was a bad market. I've been in business for many years. It shouldn't have been like this, blah, blah, blah. You'd think that after he's done that, it should be all over. He should stop hassling people. Well, no. One of the issues we've talked about before is that he's been putting PPSR hooks on the cars of Grant McLennan, the GM wholesale, GM European.
Yeah, Grant McLennan, yeah,
down in Christchurch. And so, to acknowledge that, that's fine. That's been in the Herald since as well. Do you think it'll be over? No. Last week he went and put more hooks on the cars. Again, this is over that same money that he claims he's owed by the supplier. And this isn't a director of the supplier. This is a staff member of the supplier. So, yeah, I think he's made...
I think a Christmas present for him, Rich, would be a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Hey, look, and you got to give him one thing, right? One thing that he has done is that he has exposed issues with the PPSR system. It is, and I agree, it is too easy to put a hook on through the PPSR system and to re-register vehicles in your own name. I don't care whether the authorities say these are tried and tested systems. They may be, but this is being used incredibly nefariously, incredibly easily.
Yep.
And I've got a funny feeling if I could prove it by going and maybe like putting a hook in and re-registering the car of the Commerce Minister or something like that. Not that I would. But
it's bad for business, that one.
But you're right, maybe I should re-register and then put a PPSR hook on CR1 to prove the point.
I think and David, you probably got a bit to do with this in your time there as well, but I think the whole system of the PPSR and the issue, right back to the issue of MR2As, for example, and what constitutes title to a vehicle, it just seems like a series of tack-ons. Like there was a good idea that's had bits and pieces welded and tacked as time's gone on. So it's become this big unwieldy instrument that kind of does what it says it should, but it kind of doesn't, and has all these unintended consequences just because no one's really thought through from start to finish now what it actually means. A good and well-intentioned idea that's just now honestly not fit for purpose. No, I would suggest that Mr. Schwartz has probably not gone out of his way to do this for the good of the industry just to expose the holes in the system. But I could be wrong, of course, and if he is, well done. Thanks from all of us. However, it has highlighted a real issue.
Yeah, in my time working in the sector, well, it goes back a long way. Initially, the classic line from government was, this is a system not about ownership, but about registration. And I learned that way back in, I think, 2005, when I took on a role at the Ministry of Transport. and discovered that I was the administrator of the registration system. We moved that, of course, across to the New Zealand Transport Agency because it was an operational matter and not policy. And in my time with the industry association, we raised this several times that it needs to be tightened up, but the response has been it was designed to do one thing and not the other, and everybody wants it to do the other. And I can see why and how it gets abused. It's not as solid or as robust as it ought to be.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's being abused. And this isn't the first time we've heard issues in the last year of it being abused. So yeah, they need to look at it.
It's been abused every year for God knows how long. I just think what's happening now is that the level of abuse is starting to increase as people become more tight with money. Other issues drive things. Yeah.
Yeah, desperation can cause some dumb moves. Yeah. Right, now on to the next story, and someone's actually doing some business and growing out there. Shock. Kia New Zealand upsizes parts and distribution facility. Kia has moved its parts and distribution warehouse to a new facility to serve better the growing number of Kia drivers in New Zealand. Kia New Zealand's increased ability to carry more stock lines will reduce wait times and ultimately enhance customer experience and satisfaction. Kia New Zealand Managing Director Tom McDonald says they can dispatch stuff fast from the place. It's 4 times bigger, I gather. It's near their office, and I used to get the idea there that that's, I guess, their old stock inside the new warehouse. There's a lot more room to work with. Their old warehouse offered 1,500 square metres of space. The new distribution centre is 6,000 square metres, twice the stud height, and 8 times the storage capacity. And they can unpack 6 containers at once. It will store. Yeah. Anyway, they've got a ute coming. They're gonna grow. They're gonna get a lot bigger, and that Tasman's gonna
sell more parts, need more parts and service distribution centre.
Exactly. And we were actually having a chat today in the AutoTalk office. We're probably going to do a story, hopefully with them, if not someone else, where we're going to go and attach ourselves to an order at a dealership from the time the order goes through and follow the whole process all the way to that part getting up on the car, because I think it's going to be quite interesting. And I think a lot of people, a lot of customers don't seem to realise quite what is involved in when their car needs a new alternator or whatever, actually getting that around the country overnight so it can be fitted to the car the next day or whatever as the case may be. So, yeah, let's have a go with that. Now, this one's an interesting one, and I'm sure you're both going to have a take on it. Got new ANCAP results. Got some lovely positive ones for cars like the Toyota Prado and Kia EV5. But the Suzuki Swift, 1 star. 4th generation Suzuki Swift entered the market earlier this year. At the time of market launch, Suzuki Australia advertised that the safety specifications of vehicles sold locally differed from those sold in Europe. Subsequently, ANCAP undertook additional testing to assess the local model's performance accurately. The testing of locally sold vehicles were in areas of concern with the Swift's physical crash protection performance, resulting in a 1-star safety rating. So this is not down to, it doesn't have this tech, it doesn't have that tech. This is down to the crash structure itself. A score of 47% was achieved for adult occupant protection and 59% scored for child occupant protection. Its collision avoidance performance was also limited with a score of 54% recorded in the safety assist assessment pillar. Earlier this year, ANCAP was informed of physical differences between locally supplied Swift models and those supplied in Europe, so we conducted additional crash tests on local vehicles and found some areas of concern, Carla Horg from ANCAP said. Compared to the 3-star rating achieved by Swift vehicles sold in Europe, vehicles sold in Australia and New Zealand performed differently when crash tested. Performance variation was seen in frontal offset with full width crash test. The frontal offset test showed higher chest loads and leg injury risk. Excessive pedal movement to the driver, while the full width test recorded significantly greater rear passenger chest compression measurements that exceeded allowable limits. So this is
two questions for this one. Yeah, it is a problem. number one, where is our model made? Yeah, it's probably actually primary. Whereabouts is it made compared to the European model? Are they different plants?
I'm just going to double check this, but I have a belief based on past experience that our Swift is built in Japan, whereas the European Swift is built in Hungary. Is that along the lines of what you might recall from your? No, maybe not.
Yeah, it is somewhere
I
in
don't think it's
Europe.
built in Hungary anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
I think
the Splash was built in Hungary. That much we do know.
Yeah, that was a rebadged Opel to an extent, though, wasn't it?
We don't want to talk about the Splash here anymore.
I like the Swift.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's the thing. They've been the go-to car for years and years and years by, dare I stereotype, but the younger, particularly female,
They're
sort
all
of
out of
run
Japan
around.
now.
Yep. Like a little Swift, like a little runabout, small little car, shopping basket, whatever. All those different phrases that we use as nasty stereotyping car dealers. But they're really popular. And they sort of have been a benchmark for a small little car for a really long time. And the question, I guess, is what influence will this have on buyer behaviour?
So there is a physical difference, and we know what it is. So the main difference between the European Swift and the one sold in Australia, Japan, and New Zealand is the lack of absorption bars around the radiator and one on either side of the wheel arch. So they've actually put less crash structure into the car coming to Australia and New Zealand than they have to the one going to Europe. Suzuki, what the freak are you doing?
Well, here's the thing, Richard. It depends on if the New Zealand ones are made in Japan, as you say, which I think they are. Japan market doesn't relate very much to their crash testing. And
the European ones are also built there. So this is an active choice to not put as much crash structure into vehicles going to those markets than it is to go to the European markets.
Yeah, it depends which factory they're coming out of, but I'm not defending them. I'm just sort of explaining. Here's something else. ANCAP's a marketing tool. Their standards of safety far exceed regulatory systems by a huge margin. And it's a marketing consumer thing rather than a minimum safety standard. So vehicles are built to minimum safety standards. The problem for Suzuki, though, is that the consumer doesn't understand the difference between what is a minimum safety standard in terms of ESC, ABS, etc., and crash zones. So while the car will meet the minimum regulatory thing that says yes, it can be homologated and registered and sold into our markets, it then becomes a relative performance between that car versus other cars which also meet the minimum regulatory safety standard, but then to what extent do they exceed them? And that's what the NCAP ratings do, is they measure the rate at which the vehicles exceed the minimum safety standard. So it's all about answering the question, if you're really interested in having a vehicle that's safe for your occupants, then Euro NCAP or ANCAP, etc., will give you a measure of the relative performance between the different makes and models. Yeah, so that's it. And I think Suzuki New Zealand are doing some serious talking behind the scenes with their parent company about this, because they'll be in damage control. This is not the sort of news they would want to hear.
You think?
Yeah.
Is that specification anywhere else, or is that just the solely the right hand drive? And this is an open question. I don't expect you don't know the answer. But the Swift is a fairly well known model around the world. Is it just Australia and New Zealand and that right hand drive market with that particular spec?
This is what I'm getting from the stories I'm reading overseas. I mean, I don't know which version the UK gets, but yeah, I mean it's. That's to me that's a bit shocking to hear that, because I hear what you're saying, we have to build to a standard, but that's simply choosing to take a different structure. Well, it's not even a different structure. It's just certain things that would be
Missing
bolted in or
bits.
welded in during the sales process? Is it weight? Is it so they're going for a lower emissions thing? But surely that lower emissions thing would be more important in the UK than, sorry, in Europe than in other places.
Well, I'll give you an example, Richard, and it was one that many in the used car sector didn't want to hear about and didn't want to know about. And I include you, Richard, when I initially raised this quite a few years ago. You take the Nissan Leaf. So the Nissan Leaf, when it was a lot more expensive to buy in the Australian and New Zealand market. Why? Because they made it differently. And the Nissan Leaf made in Japan wouldn't even get onto the batter's place to be tested to meet ANCAP because it was missing parts. They took parts out to make it lighter. And why did they do that? Because in Japan they don't care about, phrases, they care less about safety because consumers don't use their JNCAP as a way of purchasing it. Some do, but it's not a big feature. So the cars are definitely made for different markets. Now you can understand the Japan Leaf being less structurally sound than the Australia and New Zealand Leaf because they do value the ANCAP. What I can't understand is what's happened here with Suzuki. Why would they do this?
Yeah, I don't think I put anything at the feet of Suzuki New Zealand. I mean, this is clearly
no, it's not
up the
Suzuki
chain.
New Zealand at all. No, they'll be incredibly unhappy about this.
Yeah, and the car carries a 4-star JNCAP, though JNCAP is an arguably softer standard to what the European one is. It's a 3-star Euro NCAP, so even with a 3-star one, it's an issue.
The JNCAP puts different weights on different measures to ANCAP, so it's the proportion of the score that they look at, and ANCAP moves those proportions around depending on what they're wanting to incentivize.
Yeah.
Graham must have a customer.
Hang on, something I'm reading is suggesting that we get them from India, but I don't think that's correct. I know we have gotten some Suzukis from India.
I've been out of it too long to know. This is information that I would have been able to source when I was working in the sector through the database, but so I can't tell you.
Yeah. Where are we? It's possible it was built. It's built. Look, it's hard to tell. Look, we're researching here on the go, guys. We're going to be very careful here. We've lost Graham clearly. No, I believe it's currently built in Japan. So, yeah. Yes. So it's coming from around the world at various points. I think at some point it was coming out of Thailand, all sorts of stuff. But
yeah, they have factories all over the world.
Yes, they do. Yep. Japan. Yeah. Anyway. Australia. This is fun, isn't it? Australia, Suzuki, Swift, India. There's a lot of Indian websites claiming that the Australian Swift is built in India now, but I think that might be slightly confused.
It's possible. It's possible,
but I would not.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. It's not what we're. It's not what we're saying. But if it is, that could be the key difference. That could definitely be the key difference. But I'm not convinced.
But usually it doesn't matter which factory they are built in. Usually each vehicle that is started from when they first start to cut out the panels to when it rolls off the end of the production line is tagged for a market that it's going to, and they will build it for the standards for that market.
Yes.
So there are conscious decisions about what goes into that vehicle because everything costs money. So they will look at what is the most cost-effective way for the various markets. So it sounds that something's gone on there where if it's structurally different, one would have to question why did they make those decisions to do it that way.
Yeah. Wikipedia claims it's made in India, and it is different to the ones made in Europe and Japan. But I've got Australian websites saying the other side. So who knows? I will find out what the actual story is and where our Suzuki Swifts actually come from for a future episode to discuss this properly. Because to be clear, we don't want to provide poor information in regards to what is going on with this car, because it's quite a sensitive thing. But either way, selling a 1-star rating is not good. A 1-star rating is not good. Let's just keep it at that. Right, now, Mevo Carshare joins forces with the Automobile Association. On-demand car sharing platform Mevo and the New Zealand Automobile Association have partnered to promote mobility to AA members. The partnership, which offers AA members up to $100 in free Mevo credit in their first year, will give them new ways to get around Auckland, Wellington and Hamilton. We know members use a variety of transport options, says Jonathan Sergel, AA Chief Mobility Officer. While most have their car, members also use public transport, walking, riding, and micro-mobility. Car sharing is rapidly growing in popularity, with hundreds of thousands of trips taken in the last 12 months alone. Mevo is leading the way in innovating Kiwis' access to on-demand services. We're thrilled to support AA members to give it a go, says Sergel. Now, I have a different take on this. I think the AA is going to buy Mevo.
Oh, that would be interesting.
The AA has certainly their head of what would be called their head of what used to be called the head of mobility automotive services, Jonathan Sergel. He's now the head of mobility services. So they're clearly branching out into that. Mevo has been, I guess, somewhat of a success story in New Zealand. It's been no secret that they've had to go back for various rounds of funding over previous years. This is a fairly big call, giving every AA member in the country the opportunity to get $100. That's a lot of people. What's the membership at? Like 1 million, 500,000, somewhere in between the two. That's big. So that's my take. I reckon AA will at some point in the near future play for a stake in Mevo, and a stake in that market makes so much sense. Could tie into so many other things that they do. Having a fleet of vehicles out there available to tie into roadside assist. Rentals for when they've got insurance products and crash stuff. Mevo just makes so much sense. So if you're watching Jonathan Sergel and you've not already made an offer on Mevo, maybe you should. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a clever way, Richard, of actually testing the waters to see operationally how it works, what the cost structures are, whether it's going to make money or not, or whether it's going to be a drain on members' resources. Mm-hmm. So get in, partner with them. Try it out for a while.
Yep, and it means we've got two of the biggest names in the market in that space. So AA now tied with Mevo, Toyota New Zealand now tied with forgot the name of it, the Auckland-based car share, City Hop. So that's an interesting one there. So we were just saying, Graham, that according to Wikipedia, our Swifts are actually built in India versus the European ones and Japanese ones being built in Japan.
So that's not a surprise, and I wasn't going to.
We haven't. Just to be clear,
heard that from somewhere else.
Just to be clear,
I know it's not confirmed.
We haven't confirmed it. I will confirm it for the next episode. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So just working off that. I'm going to jump into my WhatsApp.
The news coming
go
live.
Straight to a source. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because when it comes to safety ratings, I'm saying we get hammered by it, but the used import industry traditionally has had troubling times when it comes to safety ratings on some of the vehicles. Is always playing catch up with the new vehicle marketplace, but there are times when it's not as well. And in the small car sector, it's interesting that there are a lot of used products that are actually showing better ratings. This is from public perception than some of the new product being offered today. It's not necessarily that new is better.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So let's
Well, the
move.
ratings are generated quite differently, Graham, and that has been a source of contention with me over the years.
I knew you'd say that, David.
Yeah.
You couldn't wait. I can just see you ready to go with that one. But from the public's perception, because perception is everything. So you try explaining to a consumer why the 4-star car is a terrible buy compared to the 5-star car, and often their eyes will glaze over. But perception is everything. And whether or not the Swift at 1 stars is actually a safer car than a 4-star rated used import is immaterial. It's all about the look.
Yeah. Let me be clear that the source of contention is not necessarily how the used cars are rated, although they are done differently. It invariably comes back to how the new vehicles are rated by ANCAP and the beef that I have had with ANCAP over the years. So the used car safety ratings are generated retrospectively. They're based on a reverse analysis as a result of crashes. So they look at the actual car and they look at the result of the crashes. And they do a whole series of standardizations, analysis, and they then derive what the safety performance of the vehicle has been in real life crashes, whereas ANCAP is a simulation of what they expect might happen in real life. ANCAP also put in Europe, Euro NCAP does the same. So it's not just NCAP, it's the new car assessment programs. They will put weightings on various things because they want to emphasize, for example, let's say vulnerable road user protection. So they'll put that stronger weighting on that, and so that cars don't have that tech score less poorly, yet structurally they might be okay. So it depends what it is that you're looking at. But yes, I have when he's gone.
You know, he told me in the private chat. He's got to sell cars. Look, this is 2 cars he sold on stream today.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll just finish that, Richard. So when you take the used Nissan, which wouldn't get up to a batter's plate to be rated for an ANCAP, but you look at the used car safety rating, which was quite strong, because the used car safety rating said, well, actually, we've looked at these things in accidents and we've seen how they perform. So therefore, that's the score we're going to give them.
Yeah. The used car thing, like we've discussed on the stream before, back when we were doing used car reviews for a certain other website. I got into a couple of fights with some fairly senior used imported dealers who would disagree on the safety specifications on their cars, and they were entirely convinced that their vehicle had the exact same safety specifications as the New Zealand U version, and often they did, and sometimes the Japanese cars had better safety specifications. In fact, in the earlier days, more often than not, they would have significantly better safety specifications.
Yeah, that's true.
But it isn't always the same.
No.
And that's the thing that people need to acknowledge. Now, Bow Repairs, convicted of deceptive and unfair conduct. The Commerce Commission has secured a $243,000 fine against Bow Ideal Limited, previously known as Bow Repairs and now trading as Advantage Tyre Solutions, for breaching the Fair Trading Act in the sale of the extended warranty road hazard cover. And the reason why this is important is because we sell extended warranties in various forms in the car industry. Bow Repairs is a large and long-standing company that should have taken more care to ensure it complied with the law and consumers got a fair deal. Consumer Commission Deputy Chair Anne Cullinan says the lack of processes and staff training resulted in customers being charged for road hazard cover without their awareness or consent and the necessary information given to them. Bow Repairs' invoicing system automatically added road hazard cover to all customer quotes for tyre purchases and required customers to opt out if they didn't want the product. Customers relied on Bow Repairs employees to tell them about the additional product and manually remove the hazard cover from the quote if requested. In the judgment, Judge O'Driscoll says an informed decision could not be made by the customer on whether to adapt or decline RHC. This was deceptive and unfair conduct on the part of the defendant. So, if you are selling such, you can talk about vehicle warranties, that's one thing. Always make sure that the customer knows what they're getting. Always make sure they get the documentation. Always make sure they know what they're paying. That's a key thing. But also in service departments, if you're adding on or you're selling additional packages or processes. And we're seeing more of these pop up now. We know because we get a lot of them coming to us to market through them. You can't just tack it in. You've got to explain to people what they're getting. It's got to be an opt-in, not an opt-out situation. You may think you are doing the right thing in offering your client, say, for example, a package that, offers them extended roadside assistance after their service, or you're putting $10 on the bill, and that, again, gives them free punch repairs for life for the next time they come to your service centre. Fine, great value, but they've got to know. It's the simple
This
answer.
is a real bugbear of mine personally. I hate the sales situation where I've got to opt out for exactly the reasons that the judge have commented here, and that is, how do you know that they're there unless they've been put out? By far the safest way to do it is opt in. Lay out the information, give the consumer the choice to opt in. The opt out default is just naughty, and it's devious, and I would argue it's clearly just deceptive. That's the way me as a consumer, that's how I treat them.
Yes. So a small story there, and you may be thinking, why are we going down that track? But it really is a case of there's lessons in a lot of this stuff. Now, we've discussed this a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and that is the issues going on with Nissan. Now, Honda and Nissan in merger talks, apparently. Reuters has reported that two people familiar with the matter say that Honda and Nissan are in talks to deepen their ties, and a possible merger is on the table. It says a combined Nissan-Honda entity would create a US $54 billion company producing 7 million vehicles annually. In August, the two brands formed a strategic partnership to develop electric vehicles jointly. Since then, Nissan has experienced financial trouble and has restructured its senior leadership team. Reuters says the talks between Honda and Nissan, first reported by Nikkei Asia, could allow the companies to cooperate more on technology and help them create a more formidable rival to Toyota. According to the paper, the discussions focus on bolstering collaboration and the possibility of setting up a holding company. The people who declined to be identified because information not been public said the discussions focused on finding ways to repeating there anyway. The companies are also discussed the possibility of a complete merger and looking at ways to cooperate with Mitsubishi. Nissan's largest shareholder, the Renault Group, is reportedly amenable to the deal, but a spokesperson declined to comment to Reuters. Now, I have a take on this. I believe that Renault is going to be out of Nissan very soon. They will take as many of the toys as they can when they depart. And this Nissan deal is going to have to happen. And it makes a lot of sense because whereas Renault and Nissan, aside from Europe, they kind of play in the same market, and the rest of the other big markets, they don't really. Whereas Honda and Nissan do, so there's the chance to actually save costs. Both have massive sales and production assets in the US, which certainly could work better for the rest together for the benefit of the company. Certainly there's that electric vehicle platform system there. There is obviously the taste out there for Honda badged electric cars in America because they have a rebadged General Motors electric vehicle, and that has been massively successful this year in America. The Prologue. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think the Japanese government would probably be happy to get Nissan back into Japanese hands as such. I'm not sure the whole Renault thing's ever sat particularly well with the powers that be in Japan.
Yeah, I think you're possibly right there. And I think when you look at the history of mergers and acquisitions, a number of the European marques have sort of merged over the years, but they're playing in a similar bucket. It always seemed odd to me that Renault-Nissan alliance, I think it was to try and get influence into each other's markets. But I don't think, my take on this, and I could be wrong, but it's just my opinion and my observations, is that Renault have been the difficult partner in all of this, and they tried to get more than they have been prepared to give. And the previous CEO has certainly not helped, and there's a whole series of legacy issues as a consequence of that man being pushed out. I think you're absolutely right. I think the Japanese government would be very keen to see this back into Japanese control. More broadly, we've talked about when will we see rationalization because of the rise of the Chinese vehicles and Tesla and others like this, and the transformation away from ICE towards electric and alternative drivetrains. It's coming. This is just the first of a few I think we might see.
Yeah, yeah. The interesting thing about, I think it's what is going to be Mitsubishi's place in all this. You know, they've done some types lately with Nissan. I almost feel like Mitsubishi might end up becoming, and I hesitate to say this because I don't want to be negative about it, but I think that they might become the kind of developing market kind of brand in the thing. I think you'll end up with Honda kind of sitting a bit up market, and Nissan sitting middle volume, and Mitsubishi seems to just, it's incredibly popular through Southeast Asia, in South Africa, New Zealand, Australia. Very good in the ute space, very good at tough cars that aren't necessarily the you know, most dynamic, all this kind of stuff, just good, reliable middle spec stuff, whereas Nissan and Honda can kind of chase the more refined markets. I don't know, maybe I'm reading that wrong, but
interestingly, a couple of years ago, well, maybe a little bit longer, I was still in the MIA and I've been out a little while now. When the Nissan share price went down, Mitsubishi snuck in and bought a whole big ratio of shares and upped their share ownership. So it's not as easy as you might think when if Nissan and Honda are to merge, if that's the proposal. Definitely Mitsubishi is another partner in there who have to be taken into account. They did have, as an alliance, they were reorganizing. My understanding is that they were reorganizing specialities. So Mitsubishi was going to focus on these sort of areas and Nissan on those sort of areas. I think that will still continue. There will be a tie-up with Mitsubishi because Mitsubishi's got a share ownership of Nissan.
Yeah. Yep. So it'd be interesting to see what comes out of that. I think all this stuff, it's not been great, but I think it's for the best. It's going to finally, you know, shake stuff around and probably get it in a little bit more of a healthy position for the future. Right. Our last little story for the day, new corporate identity for Kia Whakatane. Kia's home in Whakatane has undergone a corporate identity transformation. The Nichols and Kia site is the latest location in the network to receive the new update. The fit includes a new interior, new brand logo and motifs, and internal and external signage. The result is phenomenal. It has energized the dealership, and it's exciting to see the change and the positive effect it has on staff and customers. Whakatane Kia dealer principal Dean Nicholson says, the showroom makes a statement from a perspective of looks, and it is also a delightful place. Not much of a story, but I felt it'd be nice to actually end before Christmas on a dealer who is actually positive and happy and has a little bit of good news. I you know, sometimes it's nice to have that.
Yeah, I think, and Kia's doing well. Kia have always been a strong performer in the last 3 or 4 years, but I had only been playing in the new passenger vehicle market and not the light commercials. Now that they've got a light commercial, I think we'll see some expansion, and the dealers have all been preparing for this. So it's good news. They've got a good range of vehicles.
Yeah.
And of course, the other good news that we've talked about, but hasn't been on AutoTalk yet, just broke this morning, is the world's worst kept secret in motor racing. Is congratulations to Liam Lawson.
Yes. So he has got the seat. That is, just it's amazing. It is so good. And look, I would have liked to have seen him get another year in AlphaTauri, to be honest, or Racing Builds. I don't give who the frick knows. But I clearly think they're putting him at a time where they will give him a bit more than a year. I think he'll get at least 2 seasons to prove himself. If he's not done it well in 2 years, then yeah. But the more you listen, I've listened to 2 or 3 podcasts already about this morning. I think they've done it. They've got him in there as much, I think, for his attitude. I think he is very much a professional racer. He understands the Red Bull team probably a lot more than even Yuki Tsunoda does, simply because he has been around the traps as their reserve driver for so long.
The issue with Yuki, there are 2. One, he's been in the team for 4 years, so he's had a while to prove himself. And Liam showed him up a few times, and Yuki showed up Liam a few times. But he's tied to Honda. So when the relationship Honda ends at the end of next year, he could possibly leave. So there was a question mark around that. But I think you're right. And the comments made by Red Bull themselves is that Liam Lawson has demonstrated that he is a real racer. He's prepared to take the fight out there. And that's a key attribute they look for in their team.
Yes, yeah. He doesn't seem to be. He also doesn't seem to get too overwhelmed by Max. He seems to be one of them that can actually deal with the fact that he is sitting next to a three-time, four-time, a really, really good racing driver, and not get too overwhelmed by it. And I said that's, I think, just comes from he's been in that system a long time. He's worked with the team a long time. He's actually driven. People tend to forget he's driven the RB19 and the RB20 a lot more than anyone else. Probably, basically, as far as driving the modern cars, it's Max, Sergio, and Lawson, not Max, Sergio, and Yuki. Yuki only got a chance to drive the RB20 for the first time at the end of season test. So
as a favour to Honda.
Yeah. So no, it's going to be good. I think it's going to be great for New Zealand motorsport. Sounds like such a cheesy line to say, but it's true, because it just reminds some of these guys out there that are funding some of the stuff that it can pay off. There is a chance. We're working on it. We've been in discussions, had positive answers that I might get a chance to interview Liam for Autocar while he's back in country. Can't confirm it yet, but we're working on it. But hopefully that comes off, because that would be very exciting. And I've pre-warned my wife that if that happens, I will be dumping her on holiday and blasting back to Auckland in my hastily assembled Ford E-Transit with a mattress in the back of it. So yeah, it's going to be good. But no, I am going to go look at the price of flights to Melbourne for Formula One there, though I've got a funny feeling that they all sold out this morning. You weren't tempted to go over yourself?
No, I was tempted to go over for the motorcycle racing, but no, we got a few things happening on the home front. My wife's father is taken to the worst for the last little while, so we've got a few health related things that we need to help on that front for the next few months. So, but other than that, things are cruising along, and hope you have a really good Christmas. I know that you will never turn the clock off, because you don't tend to do that in the sorts of jobs we have had. No, you can't. And we'll be around, so you'll catch definitely me and maybe Graham on the 27th, if only briefly, and probably definitely the one after that. And then we're back. We'll be back before too long, Yeah. It's just, that's the best thing about this thing. It doesn't feel like too much work. It's just a couple of mates sitting here talking bullshit on the internet for half an hour. It's supposed to be half an hour, 53 minutes. So, yes. Anyway, thanks, everyone. Thanks, Graham, who's no doubt outselling his third car of the live stream. I think that's what happens, is basic. And it's happened before. I think they had a hard week on the yard once, and then he turned on the stream with no one there, and they sold 2 cars in like 20 minutes. So it's probably totally down to that. You have a good Christmas. David, you have a great Christmas, and we'll catch everyone next year for the AutoTalk Weekly Wrap.